The Youngboy diss is diabolical.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I mean, he went crazy on
was hard,
Future.
And I don't know about Future, but the Gillie one.
And then threw Gillie in it too.
Bro, you heard what he said though?
Yeah, he said you ain't get back for your son.
He said I was gonna shoot that boy Gillie, but he ain't shoot up by his son.
Yeah.
He ain't killed up by his son. He can't take that back.
Are you able to remove your negative feelings towards Gillie and the fact that you guys are beefing from how you're going to react to this?
I'm not beefing with Gillie. Gillie beefing with me.
Okay.
When NBA Youngboy went after Gillie the Kid and used the death of his son as a punchline, the culture waited for the explosion. Everyone expected threats, a diss track, a social media meltdown. Instead, Wallo responded with a cold, measured statement that shut the entire conversation down harder than 100 bars ever could. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why that response hit the way it did, and why the line NBA Youngboy crossed is one the culture almost never forgives. To understand why Wallo's words carried the weight they did, you have to understand what he survived to get there. Wallo, born Wallace Peoples, grew up in Philadelphia. At 17, he was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 20 years in the Pennsylvania state prison system. The doors closed on him as a teenager and didn't open again until he was 37. Most people come out of that broken. Wallo came out with a plan. He'd spent those 2 decades reading everything he could get his hands on, journaling, studying human behavior, and the systems that had trapped him, not just surviving a sentence, but preparing for the life after it. When he was released in 2017, he launched himself on Instagram under the handle Wallo267, pulled directly from his prison inmate number. He gave TED Talks. He became Chief Marketing Officer of the Reform Alliance, the criminal justice reform organization co-founded by Jay-Z and Meek Mill. He turned the very thing that once defined his captivity into a platform that reached millions. And from the beginning, he built it alongside one person. Gillie the Kid, born near Fa, is one of Philadelphia's most respected voices in hip-hop. But his bond with Wallo runs deeper than the industry. They're cousins who knew each other long before any of this existed. When Wallo came home in 2017, the two of them didn't just catch up, they built something. In 2019, they launched $1 Million Worth of Game, a podcast that quickly became one of the most influential platforms in the culture, eventually locking in a $3 million deal with Barstool Sports. Gillie brought the street credibility of a man who'd lived Philadelphia rap from the inside. Wallo brought 20 hard-won years of perspective. Together, guests trusted them in a way most platforms never earned. That trust is the foundation you need to understand what happened next. In July 2023, Gillie suffered the kind of loss no parent should survive. His son, Devin Spady, known as YG Cheese, was fatally shot in Philadelphia during a triple shooting. He was 25. Wallo watched his best friend go through the worst experience a human being can face. He was there, not for content, but because that's who he is to Gillie. He stood beside him through the public mourning, through the interviews where Gillie described washing his son's body by hand as part of Islamic tradition, through baseless online conspiracy theories that forced Gillie to keep defending his son's name. 2 years later, when law enforcement told Gillie the person responsible was a drill rapper who had since been killed himself, there was no clean resolution, just more weight to carry. Through every stage of it, Wallo wasn't performing loyalty. He was living it. That's the context that makes what happened in July 2026 land the way it did. On July 14, 2026, a snippet of an unreleased NBA Youngboy track leaked online, first surfacing through the No Jumper account before spreading everywhere within hours. In it, Youngboy rapped that he'd thought about killing Gillie, but that Gillie ain't killed nothing about his son. One bar, and he'd reached directly into the most devastating chapter of a grieving father's life and used a murdered child as a punchline, mocking Gillie's restraint as weakness for not answering his son's death with street violence. There was no prior beef between Youngboy and Gillie, no back and forth, no bad blood, no history. By that point, Youngboy had been on a run of dissing seemingly everyone in hip-hop, Future, Offset, Da Boy, Kalen, Dot Fur, without much regard for collateral damage. But nothing had prepared anyone for him to reach into Gillie's family specifically. What made it even harder to process was the history between them. Back in late 2023, just months after Gillie lost his son, NBA Youngboy had sat down with Gillie and Wallo on $1 Million Worth of Game. In one of the most shared moments from that episode, he turned the questions around and asked both hosts what actually made them happy, a disarmingly human moment from a man sitting across from a father still processing his son's murder. Wallo was in that room. He heard Youngboy ask his best friend what still brought him joy in the middle of grief. The contrast between that version of Youngboy and the one who put YG cheese in a diss lyric wasn't just confusing to the culture. For Wallo, it was a personal betrayal no rap beef logic could explain. When the snippet dropped and the internet erupted, everyone expected an explosion. Instead, Wallo and Gillie stepped forward together with a message far more powerful than any threat could have been. "We don't say what we're going to do on the internet," Wallo said. "That's kid shit." That line didn't land because he was performing toughness for a camera. It landed because of the 20 years behind it. Because this is a man who knows exactly what it looks like when conflict stops being theater and becomes something that changes lives permanently. He served the consequences. He chose a different path every day since. When he said real men don't announce what they're going to do online, it wasn't a motivational quote. It was lived experience, and everyone listening knew it. Gillie matched that composure. On Instagram Live, he addressed it directly. "I don't take it no type of way. You can't make me feel no type of way mentioning my son. I already come to grips with what happened. I'm not threatened." He acknowledged rap's long tradition of provocation, but drew a clear line. Using a murdered child to taunt a grieving father wasn't a rap move. It was something else. He did fire back with a bar pulled from a Lil Durk lyric, just as a reminder he hadn't forgotten how to speak that language. But even that was controlled, deliberate, and stopped exactly where he wanted it to. The reaction from the culture went beyond the usual beef commentary cycle. Fans flooded platforms with genuine respect for how both men carried themselves, especially against the backdrop of Youngboy's scorched earth run at everyone else in the game. Voices across hip-hop media drew a line at YG Cheese they hadn't drawn at any of his other targets. There are a handful of unwritten rules in hip-hop, and one of the oldest is that the dead, especially the children of people still in the game, aren't ammunition. Youngboy crossed that line clearly, and the response reflected exactly how seriously it was taken. Some argued the moment deserved something louder. That was a fair part of the conversation, but the men closest to the pain had earned the right to decide how it was handled, and what they chose said more than any diss track could have. Some tried to soften the moment by pointing out the track was unreleased, unfinished material, not an intentional statement. That argument didn't hold up. Youngboy was actively sharing snippets on his own accounts throughout this period. The line between official and leaked was essentially meaningless. And more than that, the words existed. Gillie heard them. Wallo heard them. A father who had washed his son's body with his own hands heard someone turn that son into a punchline. Whatever the technical status of the recording, the impact was real. At the core, this was never really about a rap beef. It was about what it looks like when a man stands beside his best friend during the most personal attack imaginable, without turning it into a show. Wallo spent 20 years earning the perspective he brought to this moment. He came home and built a life, a platform, and a partnership with the person who matters most to him. When a leaked lyric tried to turn Gillie's grief into content, Wallo didn't perform a response for an audience primed for chaos. He handled it the way a man handles things when he already knows exactly what's on the other side of unchecked emotion. That restraint wasn't weakness, and it wasn't silence born from fear. It was the decision of someone who has already lived through what happens when reactions go unchecked, and chose stillness over spectacle anyway, even with the entire internet waiting for the opposite. Devin Spady deserved better than to have his name weaponized. Gillie deserved better than to be mocked over the worst chapter of his life. And Wallo made sure the culture understood that, not by saying everything he could have said, but by saying exactly enough. That's what loyalty looks like when the stakes are real. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're not subscribed yet, you know what to do. More on this as it develops.